Chapter 1. Arrival. Major Tom's spacecraft buckled and groaned as it entered the atmosphere of the uncharted planet. Warning lights flashed across the dashboard, casting eerie shadows in the cramped cockpit. With a final, violent shudder, the ship crash-landed in a dense alien forest. Tom unbuckled his harness and assessed his situation. His survival knife, a standard-issue military blade, was securely fastened to his belt. That and his wits were all he had. Tom checked his communications array, but it was dead. "Just great," he muttered, stepping out into the unknown. The forest was thick with vibrant flora, unlike anything back on Earth. Sounds of unknown creatures echoed through the air, setting Tom on edge. He took a deep breath and ventured further into the woods, knife at the ready. Hours later, exhausted and wary, Tom stumbled upon a clearing. Before he could react, 3 Zork warriors surrounded him. They were tall, with scales that shimmered in the sunlight and eyes that showed no emotion. "Human," hissed one of the warriors, speaking surprisingly fluent English. "You trespass on Zork territory." Tom raised his hands, showing he meant no harm. "I'm Major Tom from Earth. My ship crashed. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need help." Another warrior, larger than the others, stepped forward. "Why should we believe you, human? You invade our space and expect sympathy?" Tom looked from one alien to the next, searching for some sign of understanding. "Look, I'm alone here. No backup, no weapons, just looking to survive. Maybe we can help each other out." The largest warrior lowered his weapon slightly, intrigued. "What can a lone human offer us?" "Information, technology from Earth. Help repairing what I can from my ship." "There has to be something you need," Tom proposed, hoping to spark an interest. The warriors exchanged glances, their expressions unreadable. Finally, the leader sheathed his weapon. "Come with us, human. Our chief will decide your fate." They led Tom through twisted vines and towering trees until they reached a village built high in the tree canopies. It was unlike anything Tom had ever seen, blending so perfectly with nature that it was almost invisible until you were right upon it. Upon their arrival, a crowd gathered, murmuring and pointing at the human in their midst. Tom was led to a large central platform where an elderly Zork sat surrounded by advisors. He was introduced as Chief Ralek. Chief Ralek eyed Tom with a mix of curiosity and caution. "You speak our language, human. You wear the uniform of a warrior yet claim to come in peace." Tom met the chief's gaze, choosing his words carefully. "I'm trained to defend myself, but that's not why I'm here. I'm lost, and I'm asking for your help. In return, I'll offer mine. We might be from different worlds, but I believe we can find common ground." The chief nodded slowly, then turned to consult quietly with his advisors. After a moment, he looked back at Tom. "We will consider your offer. For now, you will stay with us as our guest or our prisoner, depending on what we find out." "Thank you, Chief Ralek. I'll respect your rules and try to learn your ways," Tom replied, relieved to have a chance, however slight. As Tom was escorted to a guest dwelling, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of hope. Maybe, just maybe, he could turn this desperate situation into something that could benefit both the Zork and himself. Chapter 2. Encounter with Aliana. Tom adjusted the simple tunic and trousers the Zork had provided him, his old Earth uniform now torn and stained beyond repair. The Zork village, nestled high in the trees, buzzed with activity. Zork children darted along rope bridges, elders conversed in their lyrical native tongue, and vendors displayed exotic wares at bustling platforms. Standing near the edge of a canopy platform, Tom spotted a younger male Zork, taller than most, with broader shoulders and intricate patterns etched into his scales, approaching him. "Hey, human," the alien said in a deep, resonant voice. "They call me Kiver. Chief Ralek asked me to keep an eye on you." Tom raised an eyebrow. "An eye on me? Or a hand on the blade at your side?" Kiver smirked. "Bit of both." "Well, it's nice to have company," Tom replied, trying to sound amicable. He extended a hand out of habit, but Kiver merely regarded it curiously. "I'm Major Tom, by the way. Major Tom, Kiver repeated, his voice laced with amusement. Humans have strange names. You'd be surprised what we think of alien names. Kiver gestured toward a series of bridges. Come on. If you're going to be here, you should learn something useful. I'm taking you to Aliana. Tom followed, curious. Who's Aliana? She's one of our best researchers, Kiver explained. Knows more about Earth than most of us. She'll want to study you. Talk to you. They crossed a wide bridge that creaked under their combined weight. Tom couldn't help but glance down at the forest floor far below. I hope these things hold up. They've lasted generations, Kiver said without looking back. Just don't bounce on them. Finally, they arrived at a secluded platform surrounded by leafy walls and intricate carvings. Inside, a Zork female with iridescent scales sat at a table cluttered with strange devices. Her eyes, a striking shade of violet, glanced up from her work. She tilted her head, studying Tom. So this is the human, she said, her voice soft yet firm. You seem smaller than I expected. I get that a lot, Tom replied, offering a smile. You must be Aliana. Kiver stepped back, leaning against the doorframe. Aliana, meet Major Tom. Tom, don't give her too much trouble. I'll try, Tom said, sitting opposite Aliana. She wasted no time. You're from Earth. Tell me about it. Tom blinked. What do you want to know? Everything. Start with the basics, your society, your culture, your technology. Her eyes never left his, keen and calculating. Tom leaned back, unsure how to sum up an entire planet. We're complex. We've got cities that stretch for miles, machines that fly us across the world in hours, and more languages and cultures than I can count. But we're not all scientists or warriors. Some of us are just trying to get by, enjoy life. Aliana nodded, taking mental notes. And your technology? Your weaponry? Tom hesitated. I'm not here to fight. My ship wasn't armed. I had basic tools, that's all. I think the real strength humans have is our ability to adapt. Aliana's violet eyes softened slightly. Adaptability, that's something to respect. Tell me about your people's art, then. Your music, your stories. Art? Tom asked, surprised by the shift in topic. Well, we paint, sculpt, right? Music's big for us too. Everything from orchestras to rock bands. Aliana's curiosity seemed genuine. And your stories? Do they reflect who you are? I think so, Tom said after a moment. They show our struggles, our dreams, our failures, and sometimes our hopes. They're a way for us to connect to each other. Kiver, who had been quietly listening, spoke up. So, you're not all warlike conquerors? Tom laughed. Not even close. Sure, we have our share of conflict. But a lot of us just want to explore, learn, and maybe make a few friends along the way. Aliana leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. Exploration. Perhaps you and I have something in common. I've always wanted to understand other worlds, other peoples. You've lived among humans. I've only read about them. Maybe I can help you learn, Tom offered. And you can teach me about the Zork. Kiver folded his arms, his tone teasing. You're going to be her new study subject, huh? Tom grinned. Better than sitting around doing nothing. Aliana smiled faintly. You might regret that offer. I have a lot of questions. Tom shrugged. I've got time. For the rest of the day, Tom and Aliana talked. She showed him Zork maps, described their history, and even taught him a few words in her language. In return, Tom shared tales of Earth, from the grandeur of its cities to the simplicity of its forests. Kiver occasionally chimed in, adding a dry remark or challenging one of Tom's descriptions, but it was clear he was warming to the human's presence. By the time the twin suns began to set, casting the village in a warm amber light, Tom felt something he hadn't expected, a connection. Aliana's sharp intellect and Kiver's steady presence made him feel less like a stranger and more like a part of something. As they prepared to leave Aliana's workshop, Kiver clapped Tom on the shoulder. Not bad, Major. Maybe you'll fit in here after all. Tom smirked. Glad to hear it. What's next? Kiver gestured toward a distant platform. We'll see what the chief says tomorrow. For now, get some rest. You'll need it. With that, the three of them parted ways, but the conversations of the day stayed with Tom. In a village perched high above an alien forest, far from Earth, he had found the beginnings of understanding, and perhaps even friendship. Chapter 3. The Understanding. The early morning light filtered through the dense canopy above, casting dappled shadows across the village's wooden platforms. Tom rubbed his eyes as he stepped out of the small dwelling he'd been given. He hadn't slept much. Instead, he'd spent most of the night thinking about Eliana's questions and the conversations he'd had with Kiver. Despite the uncertainty of his position among the Zork, he was beginning to feel less like a stranger. Kiver was already waiting near the central gathering area, his arms crossed and his expression unreadable. "You're late, Major," he called, a faint smirk pulling at his lips. "Late for what?" Tom asked, walking up to him. "You never said when we were starting. Doesn't mean you can sleep all day. Come on, Eliana wants to go over more of those Earth stories you talked about." Tom followed him, the two weaving their way through the bustling platforms. Zork villagers nodded or stared as they passed. "So, what's the plan?" Tom asked. "We're going hunting. Thought you might want to see how we live off the land," Kiver replied. "Hunting? I've got a knife, that's about it." Kiver shrugged. "Should be enough. Don't worry, we'll keep it simple." They met Eliana near the edge of the village. She was dressed in a lighter tunic today, her scales catching the sunlight. "Good morning, Major," she said, her tone formal but warm. "I hear you're joining us on a hunting trip." "Sounds like it. Let's hope I don't slow you down too much," Tom replied. "We'll see," she said with a faint smile. "Shall we?" The three of them descended into the forest, moving carefully through the underbrush. Eliana led the way, her movements graceful and precise. Kiver followed close behind, his hand never far from the hilt of his blade. Tom brought up the rear, trying to match their pace. The forest was alive with unfamiliar sounds. Chirps, rustles, and occasional distant calls that made Tom's skin crawl. "So," Kiver said after a while, "tell me another Earth story." "Another one?" Tom asked. "Didn't I give you enough yesterday? You only scratched the surface. Give me something good this time." Tom thought for a moment, then launched into the tale of the Apollo moon landing. As he described the challenges faced by the astronauts and the moment they set foot on the lunar surface, Eliana turned her head slightly, listening intently. "Your people went to another world just to explore?" she asked. "Pretty much," Tom said. "It was more than that, though. It was about proving we could do something extraordinary, about taking that first step into the unknown." Kiver chuckled. "And you did all that without any real need? No resources to gain, no enemies to conquer?" "Not everything has to be about conquest," Tom replied. "Sometimes we do things just because we can." Eliana glanced at him. "That's refreshing." They continued on, the conversation flowing more freely as they trekked deeper into the forest. Kiver explained the Zork's hunting methods, showing Tom how to identify certain tracks and how to move silently through the brush. Eliana added insights into the ecosystem, pointing out plants and animals Tom had never seen before. As they approached a small clearing, Kiver signaled for them to stop. "There," he whispered, gesturing toward a group of large, reptilian creatures grazing in the distance. "Rhinox. They're fast, but not very smart." Eliana crouched down, pulling out a small device that Tom guessed was some sort of scanner. "We'll split up. I'll circle around to the far side and guide them toward you two. Kiver, you know what to do." Kiver nodded, his expression serious. "Got it. And what about me?" Tom asked. "Stay close to Kiver," Eliana said, "and try not to make too much noise." Tom smirked. "Thanks for the vote of confidence." She gave him a brief smile before disappearing into the underbrush. Tom and Kiver waited, the tension building as they listened to the rustle of leaves and the low calls of the Rhinox. Kiver glanced at Tom. "Ready. As ready as I'll ever be," Tom replied, gripping his knife. Suddenly, the Rhinox bolted, spurred by Aliana's movements on the far side of the clearing. Kiver sprang into action, moving with a speed and precision that left Tom struggling to keep up. They chased the creatures through the forest, Kiver's blade flashing as he brought one down. Tom managed to keep pace, his knife in hand, but he never had to use it. Kiver's skill was more than enough. When the hunt was over, the three regrouped near a stream. Kiver cleaned his blade, a satisfied look on his face. "Not bad for your first hunt, Major." "I didn't exactly do much," Tom admitted. "Being there counts for something," Kiver said. "Next time, maybe you'll get a chance to show what you can do." Aliana studied the rhinox carcass, scanning it with her device. "Good work, both of you. This will feed many." Tom sat down on a nearby log, catching his breath. "So this is daily life for you?" "It's part of it," Kiver said. "We don't just hunt. We build, we learn, we try to understand the world around us. You might fit in here if you give it time." Aliana glanced at Tom, her violet eyes thoughtful. "You're adapting well, Major. I didn't expect you to adjust so quickly." "Guess I'm full of surprises," Tom said, a faint smile on his face. As the suns began to dip toward the horizon, casting long shadows across the forest floor, the three of them prepared to return to the village. Tom felt a small measure of pride, not just for surviving the day, but for starting to earn the trust of these aliens who had once looked at him as an outsider. As they walked back, the banter between him and Kiver grew easier, and the glances he exchanged with Aliana became more frequent. Though he couldn't be sure of what lay ahead, Tom knew one thing. He was no longer facing this strange world alone. Chapter 4: The Gathering Storm. The air in the village carried an unfamiliar tension. Tom noticed it as soon as he stepped out of his dwelling that morning. The usual bustling chatter had quieted, and the villagers moved more quickly, avoiding eye contact. Even Kiver, normally brimming with sharp comments, stood off to the side of the platform, arms folded and face grim. "What's going on?" Tom asked, joining Kiver at the edge. Kiver didn't respond at first, his eyes scanning the village below. Finally, he muttered, "The council's called a special assembly. Chief Ralek said it's about you." "Me?" Tom frowned. "I thought I was making progress with everyone." "Progress or not, you're still an outsider," Kiver said, his voice low. "Not everyone wants you here. Vark and his supporters have been grumbling since the day you arrived." Tom knew the name. General Vark was one of the council's more aggressive members, a leader who had made his distrust of humans clear from the beginning. "What's he planning to do?" Kiver shrugged. "He's been calling for your removal since day one. Maybe he'll try again. Maybe worse." "I don't get it. I haven't done anything wrong," Tom said. "Doesn't matter. To Vark, your very existence here is wrong." Before Tom could respond, Aliana approached, her usually calm expression replaced by a furrowed brow. "There you are. We need to go to the council platform now." Tom nodded, falling in step beside her. "Is this about me?" "It's always been about you," she said. "But this time Vark's brought more supporters. He's demanding action." As they walked, Tom glanced at Aliana. "What should I say? How do I convince them I'm not a threat?" "Just tell the truth," she said. "You've shown more goodwill than any human they've ever encountered. That's all you can do." They arrived at the council platform, a wide, elevated stage surrounded by rows of benches. The council members sat in a semicircle, their ornate robes marking their status. Chief Ralek sat at the center, his expression unreadable. Beside him stood General Vark, his posture rigid and his eyes fixed on Tom. When Tom, Aliana, and Kiver stepped forward, the murmuring crowd hushed. Vark stepped up, his voice booming. "Once again, we are faced with a simple truth. This human has no place here. He's a liability, a threat to our way of life." Tom clenched his fists but stayed silent. Chief Ralek raised a hand, signaling Vark to step back. "We have heard your concerns before, General. Now let the human speak." Tom took a breath, stepping forward. "Chief Ralek, members of the council, I know my arrival wasn't planned. I know I've disrupted your lives. But I'm not here to harm anyone. I'm just trying to survive. And maybe, along the way, we can learn from each other. Vark scoffed. Learn from him? What could a human teach us? Aliana spoke up, her voice calm but firm. He's already taught us. He's shared his knowledge of Earth, his stories, his perspectives. He's shown us that not all humans are what we once thought. Vark glared at her. And what if he's lying? What if he's just preparing for an invasion, gathering information to destroy us? Tom shook his head. If that were true, why would I come here alone? Why would I spend my time learning your language, your customs, your history? I have no backup, no way to call for help. I'm not a spy, General. I'm just a person who wants to make something good out of a bad situation. The council members murmured among themselves, their expressions shifting between doubt and curiosity. Chief Ralek leaned forward. General, do you have evidence of this human's ill intent? Vark hesitated, then scowled. No, not yet. Then we have no cause to act against him, Ralek said. Major Tom will remain under our observation, but he will not be punished for unfounded accusations. Vark's jaw tightened, but he said nothing further. Tom felt a small surge of relief, though the tension in the air remained. The council adjourned, and the crowd began to disperse. Tom, Aliana, and Kiver lingered near the edge of the platform, watching the villagers return to their daily routines. Well, Kiver said, breaking the silence. You made it through another round. Yeah, barely, Tom replied. But Vark's not going to stop, is he? No, Aliana said. He's too proud, too set in his ways. But that doesn't mean you're alone in this. Ralek listened, and so did some of the others. You're making progress, even if it's slow. Tom glanced at her. Thanks for standing up for me back there. She smiled faintly. You stood. Any yet. Come on. Let's go find something useful to do. The three of them walked off together, leaving the council platform behind. Though the path ahead was uncertain, Tom felt a spark of determination. With Aliana and Kiver at his side, he knew he could face whatever came next. Chapter 5: The Trial of Humanity. A full council meeting was rare in the Zork village. Most decisions were made quietly, with Chief Ralek's advisors exchanging a few sharp words and then dispersing. But today, the great platform was packed, not just with council members, but with an audience of villagers watching intently. The atmosphere buzzed with quiet conversation and tense glances. Tom stood in the center of the platform, trying to keep his nerves in check. He'd spent the night going over what he'd say, running it past both Aliana and Kiver. The Zork Council had summoned him to answer for his presence and his intentions. He knew the meeting could determine whether he stayed or was banished, or worse. Chief Ralek raised his hand for silence. The murmurs died down, leaving only the sound of the wind through the treetops. Today we decide whether this human may remain among us. Ralek began, his voice measured. Let him speak. Tom stepped forward. Thank you, Chief Ralek. Counselors. He paused, glancing around. When I arrived here, it was by accident. My ship malfunctioned and I crashed. I came here with nothing, no plan, no intention to intrude on your lives. I've only tried to survive and to learn from you. A stern-faced counselor spoke up. And what have you learned, human? That you're more than what our stories ever said, Tom replied. Your culture, your history. It's not just different from ours. It's more complex. I've come to respect the way you live in harmony with your surroundings, and I've come to understand that trust must be earned. General Vark, standing at the far end of the platform, folded his arms. Words are easy. Trust isn't. Tom turned to Vark. Then tell me what you need from me. If there's something I can do to prove my intentions, just say it. Vark scoffed. You talk of earning trust, but why should we bother trusting you at all? You could leave and never come back. The simplest solution is to send you away. Maybe that would be simple, Tom admitted, but I think it would be a mistake. I'm not the first human to visit here, and I won't be the last. Keeping me here, letting me learn from you and you from me, could help us both understand each other better. Maybe next time a human comes, it won't feel like a threat. Maybe it'll be the start of something better. A younger counselor leaned forward, her expression thoughtful. You've spent time with Aliana, yes? What have you taught her? Tom glanced at Aliana, who was standing off to the side, her usual calm replaced by a faint tension. I've told her about Earth, our history, our struggles, our triumphs. She knows more about my people now than most humans know about yours. And has she taught you in return? The counselor pressed. Yes, Tom said. She's taught me about the Zork's history, your customs, your way of thinking. This made me realize how much we have in common. We both value family, community, and the pursuit of knowledge. We both want a future that's better than our past. The counselor nodded slowly, as if weighing his words. Vark stepped forward. Even if this human has no ill intentions now, that doesn't mean he won't bring harm in the future. How do we know he won't betray us once he finds a way to contact his people? Tom looked directly at Vark. I can't prove what I'll do in the future. None of us can. But I can tell you this. If I wanted to betray you, I wouldn't have worked so hard to fit in here. I wouldn't have spent my time learning your language, understanding your traditions, and trying to build trust. I would have hidden, waited for rescue, and left you in ignorance. Instead, I'm here, asking for your acceptance. Ralek raised a hand to silence the murmurs that followed. He looked at each counselor, his gaze firm. You've heard the human's words. Now we must decide. The counselors whispered among themselves, their voices too low to catch. Aliana stepped closer to Tom, her voice barely audible. You did well. I hope so, Tom murmured. What do you think they'll say? She shook her head. It's hard to tell. Vark has influence, but not all of them follow him. Kiver, who had been standing quietly nearby, spoke up. Don't let Vark get to you. Ralek is fair. He'll listen to reason. Tom nodded, though his chest was tight. This was the moment of truth, and all he could do now was wait. After what felt like an eternity, Ralek stood. The murmurs ceased as all eyes turned to him. The council has considered the human's words, his actions, and his intentions. We find no cause to punish or banish him. He may remain among us under our continued observation. A wave of relief washed over Tom. He exhaled slowly, feeling the weight lift from his shoulders. Aliana gave him a faint smile, and even Kiver clapped him on the shoulder. Ralek's voice carried over the platform. But let us be clear, trust must be maintained. If the human proves false, he will be dealt with accordingly. Tom stepped forward, bowing his head slightly. Thank you, Chief Ralek. I won't let you down. Vark scowled but said nothing. The council members began to disperse, and the audience murmured as they filed away. Tom, Aliana, and Kiver stood together, the tension finally starting to ease. Not bad for a human, Kiver said, his tone teasing. I'd say you're earning your place here. Tom smiled. Thanks, Kiver. I'll take that as a compliment. Aliana nodded. It's a step in the right direction. But don't get too comfortable. There's still much to prove. Tom met her gaze. I'm ready for whatever comes next. Chapter 6, Fugitives. Tom's pulse quickened as the faint echo of pursuit reached his ears. He exchanged a glance with Kiver, who nodded sharply, motioning toward a dense thicket ahead. They slipped into the underbrush, moving as quietly as possible, the distant sound of armored feet growing louder. Aliana, her breathing steady despite the exertion, whispered, They're closing in. Keep going, Kiver hissed. We'll outpace them if we stay off the main trails. The three of them pressed on, the forest swallowing them in shadows and muffled sounds. They had been on the run for 2 days now, ever since General Vark's faction had declared Tom a dangerous outsider. The council's decision to let him stay had been overruled in a surprise move that caught even Chief Ralek off guard. Vark's men were ordered to bring Tom back, alive if possible, but no guarantees given. Tom, Aliana said quietly as they crouched behind a fallen tree. We can't keep running forever. Vark's forces know this terrain better than you. I know, Tom replied, his voice low, but I'm not about to let them drag me back there like some criminal. Kiver peered over the tree, his sharp eyes scanning the area. If we can make it to the river caverns, they'll lose our trail. The water's too unpredictable, even for Vark's elite. How far? Eliana asked, her tone clipped. Kiver considered for a moment. Half a day's walk if we move fast. We'll make it, Tom said, determination hardening his voice. Lead the way. They broke cover again, pushing through thick vines and uneven ground. The planet's twin suns were just starting to set, their light filtering through the canopy in slanted beams. Every step they took was deliberate, their ears straining for the slightest sound of pursuit. So, Kiver said after a while, keeping his voice low, what exactly are we going to do once we're out of their reach? You got a plan, human? Tom glanced over at him. Survive first, plan later. But if you've got any suggestions, I'm all ears. Kiver smirked. I was hoping you'd have some grand scheme, something clever. Sorry to disappoint, Tom replied with a faint grin. Right now, clever means staying alive. Eliana, walking ahead, spoke without turning. There's another way to be clever. Find something they need more than they need to catch you. Tom frowned. You mean like leverage? Exactly, she said. If we can give them a reason to stop hunting you, we'll have a chance to negotiate. Kiver raised an eyebrow. And what's this leverage you're thinking of? Eliana paused, looking back at them. There are ancient sites deeper in the wilderness, places Vark's men haven't dared to go. If we reach them first, we might find something valuable enough to trade for peace. Tom's grip on his knife tightened as he considered her words. That's a gamble. It's better than waiting for them to catch up, Eliana said firmly. And we have no other options. Kiver shrugged. I'm in. Beats running forever. Good, Eliana said, picking up her pace. Then we head for the caverns, and from there we find one of those sites. But no more delays, we move through the night. Tom nodded, his muscles already aching but his resolve stronger than ever. Lead on. The hours passed in a blur of movement and whispers. They stumbled over roots, climbed steep inclines, and crossed shallow streams. Each sound of rustling leaves sent their hearts racing, but the expected ambush never came. Eventually, the ground began to slope downward, and the air grew cooler. We're close, Kiver said, glancing back at them. You'll hear the river soon. Tom was about to reply when a noise behind them stopped him short. He held up a hand, signaling for silence. Kiver and Eliana froze, their eyes scanning the darkness. It wasn't the heavy footfalls of Vark's men. It was something else, something lighter, almost a whisper against the forest floor. Eliana leaned closer to Tom, her voice barely audible. It could be one of the forest's predators. They're territorial, but they won't follow us into the caverns. Let's not give it a reason to test that, Kiver muttered. Keep moving. They crept forward, every step measured. The faint roar of water grew louder, masking some of the smaller forest sounds, but not enough to ease their nerves. Finally, they reached a rocky incline where the trees thinned out. Below them, a wide river churned through a rocky gorge, its spray rising like mist in the moonlight. There, Kiver said, pointing to a dark opening in the cliff face across the river. The caverns. Tom stared at the rushing water. How do we cross? Kiver smirked. You swim. Seriously? Tom asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Don't worry, Eliana said. It's not as bad as it looks. The current's strong, but it won't pull you under if you move quickly. Tom sighed. Guess I don't have much of a choice. They descended to the riverbank, the water's roar now nearly deafening. Kiver was the first to wade in, his movements deliberate as he crossed the turbulent stream. Eliana followed, glancing back only once to make sure Tom was right behind her. The water was icy, biting at Tom's skin, but he pushed through, keeping his gaze fixed on the cavern's dark mouth. When they emerged on the other side, soaked and shivering, Kiver gestured toward the cavern entrance. We'll be safe once we're inside. They won't risk following us through the tunnels. Tom nodded, brushing water from his face. Lead the way. As they stepped into the cavern, The world outside seemed to fade away. The air grew damp and still, and the faint glow of bioluminescent fungi lit their path. Tom glanced at Aliana, who looked more determined than ever. Kiver, for once, remained silent, his usual cocky demeanor replaced by a grim focus. Whatever lay ahead, Tom knew they had crossed a threshold. They weren't just running anymore. They were heading toward something new, something that could change their fate. Chapter 7, The Hidden City. The air inside the cavern was cool and damp. The faint glow of luminescent fungi on the walls gave the space an otherworldly feel. Every footstep echoed in the vast hollow, making it impossible to tell whether they were truly alone or being followed. Tom walked at the front, knife in hand, while Kiver and Aliana scanned the shadows behind them. "I've never liked this place," Kiver muttered. His voice carried a hint of unease, unusual for the otherwise brash Zork. "Too quiet. Too many blind spots. Let's just keep moving," Aliana said, her tone steady. "If we find what I think is here, it'll be worth it." Tom glanced over his shoulder. "What exactly are we looking for?" Aliana hesitated, her gaze flicking toward the ceiling. "The city that once existed here. It's more than a legend, but no one knows for certain where it lies. If we find it, we may find records, evidence of past contact between our species. Something to show Vark we're not enemies." Kiver frowned. "And if we don't find anything? Then we'll deal with that when it happens," Aliana replied firmly. "For now, we keep moving." The cavern's tunnel gradually widened until the group emerged into a massive chamber. Towering stone pillars rose into the darkness above, carved with intricate patterns. Tom shone his small survival light around, revealing faint outlines of buildings partially buried under centuries of rockfall and growth. "Is this it?" he asked, his voice hushed. Aliana stepped forward, her eyes scanning the details. "Yes, it's real. The hidden city." Kiver let out a low whistle. "I always thought it was just a story, but this is something else." Tom moved closer to one of the crumbling walls. Strange glyphs covered the stone, their meaning lost to time. Aliana pulled a scanning device from her bag and began to record. "These symbols," she said, excitement creeping into her voice. "They don't match anything in Zork records. They might be human." "Human?" Tom asked, raising an eyebrow. "How could humans have been here before?" Aliana didn't look away from her scanner. "That's what we need to figure out. If these glyphs were left by your kind, it means we've had contact long before anyone thought possible." Kiver stood guard, his hand resting on his blade. "Let's not get too caught up in history just yet. I'll keep an eye out. This place might not be as empty as it looks." Tom and Aliana continued exploring the ruins, their curiosity driving them deeper into the city. The ancient architecture seemed to defy gravity, with some buildings perched on ledges high above, while others were carved directly into the cavern walls. The further they went, the more traces of an advanced civilization they found: elaborate carvings, broken devices, and fragments of tools that resembled both human and Zork designs. Tom pointed to a stone pedestal at the center of a partially collapsed plaza. "That looks important. Maybe it's some kind of archive." Aliana moved to the pedestal, running her hands over its surface. "Possibly. It's too damaged to tell, but I might be able to decipher the markings. Give me a moment." As she worked, Tom turned to Kiver. "You think this is enough to get Vark off my back?" Kiver snorted. "If it's not, I don't know what will be. But don't think this means he'll suddenly start liking you. The guy's got a long memory." "Fair enough," Tom said. "I'm not here to make friends with him, just to stay alive." Aliana interrupted their conversation. "I think I've got something. These carvings, they mention a meeting, a gathering of two peoples, sharing knowledge." "Two peoples," Tom repeated. "That sounds like humans and Zork." "It could be," Aliana said. "If we can uncover more details, it might show that our ancestors cooperated. If that's the case, Vark's entire argument against you falls apart." Kiver crossed his arms. "If he doesn't just accuse you of making it all up." Tom frowned. "That's a good point. How do we prove any of this is real? We'll take recordings, images, and scans, Aliana said. I'll present it to the council myself. They know my reputation as a researcher. I'll vouch for its authenticity. Kiver nodded. Good, but let's not stick around too long. I don't trust that no one's followed us. As if on cue, a distant noise echoed through the chamber. It was faint, but unmistakable, the sound of something moving, something not too far away. All three of them froze, listening intently. Someone's here, Kiver said, drawing his weapon. We need to move. Aliana quickly secured her scanner. I've got enough for now. Let's go. Tom took the lead, retracing their steps toward the cavern's entrance. The quiet became oppressive, every shuffle of their feet amplified by the silence. The sense of being watched grew stronger, though they never saw anyone. When they finally emerged into the open air, the planet's twin moons hung low on the horizon, casting a silvery glow over the landscape. Tom glanced at Kiver. Think they saw us? Doesn't matter if they did, Kiver replied. We've got what we came for. Now we just have to get back before Vark's men catch wind of it. Aliana nodded. This isn't just about you, Tom. If we're right, we've found something that could change everything. We need to get it to the council as soon as possible. Then let's keep moving, Tom said, steeling himself for the long trek ahead. The sooner we show them what we found, the better. They moved quickly through the forest, leaving the cavern and its secrets behind. Though they didn't speak of it, each of them knew that what they carried could alter the fragile balance between human and Zork. It was a discovery that might just forge a new path forward, if they could survive long enough to share it. Chapter 8: Unity and Resolution. By the time the trio reached the village, the first rays of dawn were piercing the dense canopy above. The Zork settlement stirred slowly, but word of their return spread quickly. It wasn't long before Tom, Aliana, and Kiver stood once more on the central council platform, with Chief Ralek and the other counselors seated before them. The chamber was packed. Villagers pressed close, their eyes fixed on the human and his companions. General Vark, standing at the edge of the council's dais, watched them with a cold, calculating glare. Chief Ralek raised his hand, and the murmuring crowd fell silent. You have returned, he said, his voice deep and steady. And from the reports we've received, you ventured far beyond the safety of the village. Tom stepped forward, his hand resting on the knife at his belt. We did, and we found something important. Aliana produced her scanner, holding it up for all to see. Chief Ralek, counselors, we found the ruins of the hidden city. A collective gasp rippled through the crowd. Even the stoic counselors leaned forward in their seats. Ralek's eyes narrowed. The hidden city is a legend. It's real, Aliana said firmly. And I have proof. She activated the scanner, projecting images onto a large, curved screen behind her. The crowd gasped again as the ancient glyphs and carvings filled the space. Aliana pointed to one particularly clear inscription. This symbol here, this is not of Zork origin. It matches patterns found in human artifacts. Vark stepped forward, his tone sharp. And how do we know these aren't forgeries? How do we know you didn't create these artifacts to deceive us? Kiver's hand went to his blade, but Tom motioned for him to hold back. Instead, Tom addressed the council directly. Why would I do that? I've been here for months, learning your language, your customs, trying to show that I'm not your enemy. I had nothing. It suggests that our people and the humans have met before, long before our time. That means this hostility between us is not inevitable. It is something that can be overcome. The chief's words sent a wave of murmurs through the audience. Tom glanced at Aliana, who nodded slightly. He turned back to the council. I never wanted to fight. All I wanted was to survive. But along the way, I've seen that we're not so different. Maybe we can start over. Maybe we can work together. Vark's face twisted in frustration. And what of the risks? If we open ourselves to them, How long until their kind comes in force and takes what they want? Not all humans are like that, Tom replied firmly. Sure, we've had our conflicts, but so have you. The fact that we're standing here, having this discussion, proves that we can choose a different path. A younger counselor stood, her voice calm yet firm. Chief Ralek, I believe we must consider what has been presented here. If the ruins show that humans and Zork once cooperated, it would be foolish to dismiss the possibility of doing so again. Another counselor nodded. I agree. The evidence is compelling, and this human's actions have shown that he is not the monster we feared. Ralek rose from his seat, his gaze sweeping the chamber. General Vark, you have made your case many times. You have warned us of the dangers, and your caution has served us well in the past. But now, we must weigh that caution against the possibility of growth, understanding, and peace. Vark opened his mouth to protest, but Ralek silenced him with a raised hand. This is not about pride or fear. It is about our future. The chief turned to Aliana. You have studied these findings. You believe they are genuine? I do, she said, her voice steady. These symbols are consistent with other ancient artifacts. I have no doubt that this city was a meeting place for our ancestors and humans. Ralek nodded, then addressed Tom. You have spoken plainly. You have proven that you are willing to risk your life for the chance to build a bridge between our peoples. For that, you have my respect. The chief faced the crowd. We will open talks with the humans. We will approach them not as enemies, but as potential allies. It will not be easy. It may take many years. But if there is even a chance that we can build a better future, then we must take it. The crowd murmured in approval. Even some of Vark's supporters looked uncertain, their expressions softening. Vark himself stood rigid, his jaw tight, but he said nothing more. Tom felt a weight lift from his shoulders. For the first time, it seemed like the endless cycle of fear and suspicion was breaking. He looked at Aliana and Kiver, both of whom wore faint smiles. Aliana's eyes met his, and for a brief moment, he felt something close to joy. As the council dismissed the assembly, villagers approached Tom cautiously, some offering tentative smiles, others simply nodding in acknowledgement. Kiver clapped him on the back. You pulled it off, Major. Aliana stepped closer, her voice low. You've done more than that. You've shown them there's another way. Tom nodded, looking out over the village. He didn't know what the future held, but for now he was content. He had found a place here, something he had never expected.